Hey there, welcome back. Tonight, we were stepping quietly into a place that almost never makes it into the fairy tales. The Servant S world inside a medieval castle. By watching this video, you'll learn what life truly felt like down there. The smells, the cold, the exhaustion, and the strange dignity of people who kept history's grandest buildings alive from the shadows. Before we begin, a small favor. If you enjoy these calm journeys through forgotten corners of the past, consider subscribing. Only if it helps you drift peacefully into more stories like this one. And tell me where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. I like to imagine this quiet web of listeners across the world, each of you lying in the dark, letting time melt away as we open another old wooden door together. Now, let's step inside. It's still black outside when the bell rings, not the elegant toll of a chapel bell. This one is dull, heavy, impatient. It doesn't sing, it scolds. You jolt awake on a straw mattress that smells faintly of mildew and the sweat of whoever slept here last season. The wool blanket scratches your neck, but warmth is too precious to complain about. You just lie there a moment, staring into the dark, trying to remember which ache in your body hurts the most today. The bell rings again, and again. Someone coughs nearby. That deep, chesty kind of cough that medieval winters love to collect. You swing your legs off the bed. The floor is cold enough to make your bones clench. Your breath fogs faintly in the air. You are in the lower servants' quarters, a long, stone corridor beneath the kitchens. The air smells of damp walls, ashes, and cabbage that boiled too long the night before. There's no sunrise here, just a thin line of torchlight outside the door, flickering against the uneven walls. You pull on your rough wool tunic, it feels like wearing sandpaper, and tie the frayed cord around your waist. Someone mutters that the Lord's hunting party leaves at dawn, which means the kitchen must already be blazing. You start moving. There's no breakfast waiting for you. No coffee, no comfort, just obligation. The hallway feels alive with murmurs and footsteps. A dozen people moving in practiced silence. Chambermaids, stable hands, cook's boys. Each one half awake, half afraid of being noticed. The rule is simple. If you're noticed, you're probably doing something wrong. You pass a young girl wringing her apron between her hands. She's maybe 13, hair tied back in a knot, already with a burn mark on her wrist. She nods when she sees you. The kind of nod that says we survived another night. Up ahead, the kitchen roars like a forge. It's not glamorous. It's chaos in motion. Steam, smoke, wood cracking under the fire's hunger. The air is thick with the smell of animal fat and yesterday's soup. Knives thud against wooden blocks. Pots bang like a drumline of misery. Your job? Hauling water from the courtyard well? Again. Each bucket weighs nearly as much as a small child. The rope cuts into your palms no matter how many calluses you've grown. The well water bites with cold so sharp it feels like betrayal. But you keep going, because nobody cares about pain at this hour. Outside, dawn creeps in, slow, pale, and indifferent. You can see your reflection in the bucket's surface, blurred, hollow-eyed, older than your years. A rooster crows somewhere far off. The castle itself groans awake. Doors creak, hooves stamp, and smoke begins to drift from the chimneys. The courtyard mud sucks at your boots with every step. You are careful not to splash the Lord as hounds. That mistake earns you more than an insult. When you finally bring the water back inside, the cook barely glances up. She's been awake since before the bell. Her hands move with ruthless precision, chopping, stirring, commanding the younger ones like a general of the kitchen. She doesn't need words, just a glare. You've seen knights flinch less. Someone drops a pan. The clatter slices through the air. A single second of silence follows. Then, pick it up, you fool, and the rhythm resumes. You return to the well. Then again, and again. The world shrinks to repetition. Bucket, water, fire, breath. By the time the lords wake, the castle smells halfway human, bread baking, wood smoke softening the cold. but you know the trick. All those scents of comfort belong upstairs. Down here, they mingle with sweat, damp linen, and the faint rot of vegetables forgotten in the dark. Someone jokes, softly, that a good servant is like a ghost, everywhere and nowhere. You smile because it's true. You pass through halls carrying trays that aren't yours, clean messes you never made, listen to orders meant to sound polite, but never are. You're invisible until you make a mistake, and when you do, every eye turns to you like arrows. The lady of the house appears suddenly, gliding across the corridor in silks that whisper like secrets. Her perfume cuts through the air, sweet, sharp, impossible. For a moment, the scent fills your lungs and almost feels like another world. Then she's gone, and you're left holding the empty bucket, breathing in smoke again. There's no clock here, but you can feel the sun rising, not through warmth, but through workload. The castle starts to hum louder, horses being saddled, armor clinking in the armory. Someone shouts for torches to be snuffed. Another voice curses at a missing ladle. You stop for a second to stretch your back. It sounds like someone stepping on dry twigs. You're 19, but your spine argues otherwise. And yet, there's something strangely peaceful about it all. The rhythm, the purpose, the way the world has already decided who you are, so you don't have to. You just move through it, like part of the castle itself. Stone that breathes, obeys, and endures. A thin ray of light finally slips through a crack in the high wall. Dust dances in it like tiny stars. You pause to watch. No one notices. No one ever does. Upstairs, the first tray of food is ready. You carry it carefully, each step rehearsed. Bread, cheese, and wine for the Lord's morning table. You balance the platter with trembling precision. You smell the bread. Real bread. Still warm, golden, soft. You imagine what it would taste like if you could ever eat it fresh. You never will. But you smile anyway, because even dreaming feels like rebellion. As the great hall doors open, you hear the low murmur of noble voices, laughter, conversation, the scrape of knives on polished plates. You bow your head, step forward, and vanish into the quiet machinery of service once again. And somewhere far below, in the damp corridor where the day began, the old bell sits silent, waiting for its next command. The first hour after sunrise is the cruelest. The world above your head is already eating. Soft bread, warm milk, the crack of laughter over silver plates, while you and the others are still chasing crumbs from yesterday's crusts. Breakfast isn't a meal, it's an afterthought. Someone hands you a hunk of bread that could double as a brick, and you gnaw at it like an animal working through regret. The crust tears your gums, and the inside tastes faintly of smoke and dust, but you eat it anyway, because there's nothing else. Water comes from the same bucket you just hauled from the courtyard. It smells of iron and moss, and it bites the tongue. You take a sip, swish it around, and swallow, pretending it's clean. Pretending always helps. Work doesn't wait for digestion. The kitchen steward, a man with a face like an old boot, shouts your next task before you've even wiped your mouth. Today, you're on hearth duty. The word sounds cozy until you meet the fire. The great kitchen hearth is a monster. Blackened stone, roaring with heat, glowing coals spitting tiny meteors onto the floor. You grab the iron poker, push logs into place, and feel your eyebrows curl from the heat. Your skin tightens. Sweat slides down your neck, catches the ash, and turns to mud. It's strange how quickly the senses adapt. Within minutes, the smell of burning wood, roasted meat, and boiling ale becomes a kind of lullaby. You can almost forget your hands are blistering. Almost. By mid-morning, the castle is alive in every direction. In the great hall, servants polish tables with cloths so worn they're more whole than fabric. In the stables, boys scrub hooves, scrape dung, and whisper to nervous horses that will never remember their names. You pass a laundry maid, dragging a bundle of linen twice her size. She smiles at you, or maybe it's a grimace, and you both keep walking without a word. Talking wastes time, and time belongs to someone else. The sound of footsteps on stone follows you everywhere. Boots, clogs, bare feet, each one a tiny reminder of hierarchy. You can tell who's coming long before you see them. The lazy stride of a squire, the clipped precision of a lady's maid, the heavy, deliberate tread of someone with authority. You lower your head for all of them. When you finally step outside for the midday run, carrying waste buckets this time, the sunlight feels foreign, too bright, too open. The air smells of wet hay and animal musk. The waste pit sits behind the stables, a reeking monument to the realities of castle life. You tip the bucket, trying not to breathe, and wonder, not for the first time, if nobility ever thinks about where their filth goes. A stable boy beside you snorts. "They don't," he says simply. And that's the end of that conversation. Back in the kitchen, the rhythm continues. Someone kneads dough, someone stirs soup, someone yells for more salt. The cook, assistant, a thin woman with a voice sharp enough to slice through bone, corrects you for stirring counterclockwise. You didn't know that mattered, but apparently it's the difference between edible and ruined. You nod, apologize, and keep stirring the right way. The floor beneath your feet is slick with grease, and every step feels like a negotiation with gravity. Someone slips, curses, keeps going. Nobody laughs. Too tired for that. The fire never rests, and neither do you. By the time noon comes, your arms tremble from carrying trays. You've memorized the castle's corridors by muscle memory, where the floor dips, where the torches smoke too much, where you can pause for one breath before being noticed. That one breath is your luxury. That is the secret no one writes in the chronicles. The smallest moments, a cool draft, a scrap of quiet, a stolen crumb, are the only kind of wealth you'll ever know. Upstairs, a noble woman sneezes. 2 servants rush to fetch cloth, water, and apology. Down here, you pick ash from under your fingernails and realize you haven't seen your reflection in weeks. The day moves like a tide you can't resist. Each task washes into the next. Scrub, carry, polish, repeat. The tools of your world are buckets, rags, knives, ropes, nothing that belongs to you, yet everything your life depends on. Your hands are a map of your days, cracked, blistered, lined with ash. The skin splits near the thumbs where the rope rubs. You wrap it with linen, but the linen darkens quickly, and you pretend not to see. Someone starts humming near the ovens. It's not a song you recognize, just a low winding tune that sounds like fatigue turned into music. You find yourself matching your breathing to it. A dog barks somewhere near the kitchen door, its claws scratching against the stone. You toss it a bone before the cook can see. The dog wags its tail, a flash of pure, unfiltered joy, and for one ridiculous second, you feel lighter. Then the cook spots you. "Don't waste good bones," she snaps. You bow your head, but inside, you're smiling. Even rebellion this small feels enormous. As the afternoon sun filters weakly through high slits in the wall, the castle's rhythm slows. For the lords, it's time for leisure. A game of chess, a nap, a quiet reading by the fire. For you, it's time for laundry, mending, and sweeping. The broom handle rubs against your palm, reopening an old blister. You hiss quietly, but keep going. Pain isn't an interruption here. It's background noise. A drop of blood falls onto the flagstones. You wipe it away with your sleeve. The stain remains. Most things do. And yet, beneath all this exhaustion, there's a strange kind of pride. You glance around at the other servants, each one moving with quiet competence, every motion honed by repetition. They don't look noble, but they move like the gears of something greater, something older than any of the names carved into the stone upstairs. You realize this castle doesn't belong to the Lord. Not really. It belongs to the hands that lift it, feed it, warm it, to the ones who never get their portraits painted but keep the story alive anyway. That thought carries you through the last hour of light. The fires dim. The cook finally sighs. The day's meal complete. Someone laughs softly, then stops. unsure if laughter is allowed. You wipe your hands on your apron, stretch your aching back, and look toward the narrow slit of sky. A single crow crosses it, wings flashing black against gray. The next bell hasn't rung yet, but it will. There's a rhythm to castle life that no one writes about, a kind of heartbeat pulsing through stone. You start to feel it after a while, beneath the noise, beneath the orders. A thud here, a door there, the echo of footsteps, each one timed, predictable, precise, like a living organism that breathes smoke and sweat if you listen carefully. And you always do, because listening means surviving. You can almost hear the building itself thinking. The great hall comes first. It's the castle's lungs. By mid-afternoon, the smell of roasted meat, wine, and damp wool fills the air. You move between tables, wiping away yesterday's spills that never really left. The wood is rough and scarred, marked by 100 knives and 1,000 careless elbows. Your rag catches on a splinter. You pull it free and glance up at the banners. They hang high and motionless, faded by candle smoke, red, gold, and dust. They look like pride that's been hanging too long. From the kitchens, the sounds carry upward. Knives, laughter, someone cursing the fire. The sounds are constant, comforting even, because when it's quiet, something's wrong. Upstairs, the lady's maid passes through the corridor, her arms full of silk gowns. You pause to let her pass. She doesn't look at you, but you catch a trace of lavender oil as she goes. For a second, the scent makes you dizzy. Too clean, too distant. That's what separates your world from theirs. Scent, fabric, silence. They walk through the same stone halls but breathe a different air. You return to your work, scrubbing, holing, sweeping, all small movements feeding a larger rhythm. It's like being part of a choir that never stops singing, even when no one listens. In the servants' passageways, the air is thick and stale. The walls close in tight, built for function, not beauty. You duck beneath a low beam, brush past a cobweb, and continue along the narrow route that winds behind the Lord's chambers. The passage smells of wax and smoke, but also of something human. Bodies passing day after day, the faint musk of endurance. You stop at the laundry room. Steam hangs heavy in the air, and a dozen hands move like clockwork, wringing, scrubbing, twisting. The women here barely speak. Conversation is a luxury reserved for those who don't have to count how many sheets remain. Someone hums softly, off-key. The sound bounces against the wet stone like a ghost of comfort. You linger just long enough to feel the heat of the copper tub, then move on. Every castle has a hierarchy, even among those at the bottom. The kitchen boys outrank the scullery girls, the stable hands outrank the sweepers, and the steward, that half-smiling, half-scowling figure, rules them all, just beneath the Lord. He's everywhere somehow, a shadow that appears behind you when you pause too long, a voice that knows when you're late, even when there's no clock to measure it. When he speaks, it's always the same tone, not cruel, not kind, just final. He calls you by name, but never meets your eye. That's how authority works here, polite distance. He tells you to fetch water for the bathhouse. You nod and go, because you know better than to ask whose bath it is. The bathhouse is small, tucked behind the main hall. The air inside is thick with steam and the sweet sour scent of rose oil. You fill the copper tub, bucket by bucket, watching the water darken slightly from the iron. For a moment, you envy the stillness of that water. It doesn't labor. It doesn't fear. It just reflects whatever leans over it. You look down and see your reflection, warped, tired, and strangely calm. Then a voice calls out your name, and the spell breaks. Everywhere you go, you hear layers of sound blending together. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer in the courtyard, the chatter of maids folding linens, the low rumble of a priest reciting prayers in the chapel. The castle is an orchestra without a conductor, and somehow it still stays in tune. At dusk, the torches are lit, one, by a boy younger than you were when you first arrived. His face glows orange with each flame. You watch him work and realize that even this small act, lighting, moving, breathing, is part of keeping the heart beating. Without the servants, the castle would fall silent, and silence is death. You stop by the stables to return a bucket. The air is thick with hay dust and the warm smell of horses. They huff softly as you pass, eyes wide and patient. You run your hand along one's neck, the coarse hair, the slow pulse beneath. The stable master nods at you, the closest thing to affection you'll get today. You nod back. That's conversation enough. A few steps away, a group of pages are polishing armor. The sound is metallic and rhythmic. Scrape, pause, exhale, scrape. The armor gleams, but the boys' faces are streaked with soot. One of them grins when he catches you looking. You grin back, quietly, before the steward's shadow sweeps across the yard again. The boys fall silent. You do too. The evening meal approaches, and the kitchen grows frantic again. Fires reignited, pots clattering, orders flying. You move without thought, muscle memory carrying you through the motions. Bread on tray, wine in cup, cloth on spill. The cook mutters to herself about portions and timing. You know better than to interrupt. By the time the last platter leaves for the great hall, you're lightheaded from heat and hunger. You lean against the wall, close your eyes, and listen. The muffled echo of laughter and cutlery floats down the corridor. That's the sound of satisfaction. Theirs, not yours. But here's the secret no chronicler ever wrote. The castle depends more on the invisible ones than on the crowned ones. If you stopped working, if even one servant refused, the whole glittering structure would grind to a halt within hours. The lords might wear velvet and command armies, but you control something older, the rhythm of survival. And somewhere deep down, as you drag a mop across the flagstones, you know it. You are the pulse that keeps this stone beast alive. Power doesn't shout here. It whispers from silk, nods from carved chairs, and glides on polished floors you're forbidden to scuff. The castle's rules aren't written on parchment. They're stitched into the gestures of people who never need to explain themselves. You learn by watching. You survive by remembering. You carry a basin along the upper corridor, and every step reminds you who owns the air. The stones are the same as below, but footsteps sound different up here. Slower, softer, padded by privilege. The light is different too, a warmer gold, as if even the sun observes etiquette in the Lord's chambers. You pass the steward and lower your gaze. He doesn't slow down. His approval comes in the form of not noticing you. It is, ironically, the highest compliment you receive all day. Recognition is risky. Invisibility is insurance. Etiquette begins at the wrist. How you hold a cup, how low you bow, how long you wait after a command to begin obeying it. Not too fast, not too slow. Exactly human, but comfortably machine. Your hands memorize dozens of tiny choreographies, folding 2 corners of linen before the other 2, presenting a knife with the hilt toward the one who pays to never think about hilts. Each movement removes one more opportunity for offense. It's like sanding down splinters on a ship you don't own, just to keep from bleeding. The Lord is hunting this week. That means fewer meals, more guests, and a rise in opinions. He speaks rarely to you, almost never by name, but his needs ripple downward like stones thrown into a pond you're forever bailing. You are told to fetch, arrange, pull, push, polish. Every verb is a commandment with no table of contents. You do not answer with words. You answer with silence that moves. The lady of the house is precise where the Lord is casual. She doesn't bark. She edits reality. She can tilt a room with one eyebrow. Today she stands by the window, light pooling at her feet, and dictates the order of the evening. Candles trimmed lower than last night. The hearth swept cleaner than last time. Cushions turned so the seams vanish. She does not look at you when she speaks. You are the room adjusting itself, a shadow with fingers. Her perfume is a kingdom on its own. Roses, honey, and the faintest bite of clove. The scent follows you long after she leaves, an after image for the nose. You breathe it in and feel both dazzled and hungry. Beauty is a meal you're allowed to smell. Breakfast doesn't energize you. It just happens to you. Down the corridor, a young noble laughs the way a sword reflects light, bright, careless, too close to your face. He drops a glove without noticing. You pick it up and lay it precisely across the bench, palm down, as if the glove itself ranked above you in the order of creation, which in practice it does. The glove will be missed before your name is remembered. You notice how authority arranges itself like furniture. The priest sits near the fire, closest to warmth and conversation. The captain of the guard prefers the heavy chair by the door, where he can watch edges and exits. The steward remains standing, always. He is a hinge more than a person. You place the wine at the table's edge, never the center. Your reflection looks back at you in the red surface. A smear of face, a borrowed hand, a person-shaped blur steering a cup around other people's appetites. Rules multiply the higher you climb. You do not step on the central strip of carpet. You do not pass between two nobles mid-conversation. You orbit them like a meek moon. You do not touch wood that has been carved with animals unless you are polishing it, in which case you touch only the animals and never the empty space, as if even the hollows have pedigree. The misery isn't dramatic. It's cumulative. Weight added grain by grain until the scale never rises again. It's the way your back anticipates a bull before your mind hears a name. It's the dryness behind your eyes when smoke and sleep tug in opposite directions. It's knowing the exact temperature of water a lady prefers for washing her hands, and knowing the exact number of seconds you can warm your own by the hearth before someone notices generosity on your skin. Still, there are moments when the human peeks through the costume. The lady Sigosh S-maid drops a pin and swears under her breath in a dialect she's not supposed to remember. The steward coughs twice before finishing a sentence and looks, for one heartbeat, like a man with lungs instead of a ledger. The old knight rubs his knee when he stands and nods at you, almost imperceptibly, a veteran salute to another worker of pain. Your knees reply for you. They sound like a bag of rocks being shaken by a confused peasant. In the withdrawing room, you lay out chessmen carved from bone and dark wood. The lord's brother plays himself, moving pieces between sips of spiced wine. He asks for more heat. You add a log, and the flame throws light into the pattern of the game. The pawns like foot soldiers who will never be named, the king heavy and easily cornered, the queen lethal, unbothered by distance. You recognize the board. You've been walking it all day. When the minstrel tunes his instrument, the rules shift again. Sound gives everyone permission to pretend. Laughter loosens. Hierarchy waltzes, but doesn't disappear. You stand near the doorway, far enough to be air, close enough to be blame. The song speaks of lovers in an orchard. No one here has time for orchards, but they listen anyway, and you listen to them listening. Even power needs lullabies. You slip away to fetch a tray and nearly collide with a page running full speed on quiet feet. His face is all eyes and apology. You steady the cups with a fingertip and gesture for him to pass. He does, relieved, then remembers to bow. Rank is a map. Getting lost has consequences. He won't make the same mistake twice. Neither will you. Later, an argument surfaces like a fin in still water. The captain murmurs about the gatehouse repairs. The steward counters with numbers that don't blink. The lord decides with a shrug. Timber will be found. Men will be found. The work will be done. The words fall like snow you will shovel tomorrow. Your place in this weather system is simple. You distribute the temperature. You carry warmth into cold rooms, cool air into overheated ones, comfort into spaces that growl when unattended. You are climate control with a heartbeat. The only applause is the absence of complaint. In the gallery, you polish a row of metalwork that has never been useful. A ceremonial helm catches your face in its curve and warps it into a stranger with narrower hopes. Your cloth moves in small circles, and you feel the world narrow to the discipline of shine, the smell of wax, the squeak of linen, the soft scrape where the metal refuses to agree. This is where your mind wanders without wandering, to the imagined taste of fresh bread, to the memory of rain on your tongue, to the distant field where the wind spoke a language without titles. You keep polishing. Desire is to be folded and put away like everything else. Night leans in, candles lower, voices cool. The lady disappears into soft rooms braided with tapestries. The Lord pauses by the fire and stares into it as if reports will rise from the coals. You are 6 paces away, invisible and indispensable, holding nothing and therefore ready to hold anything. You retrieve the final cups, wipe the final stain, correct the final asymmetry. Your hands perform a last litany of obedience, align the chair legs, square the cushion corners, calm the table's restless edge. The room exhales. It's as close as stone ever comes to sleeping. On your way downstairs, you pass the glove on the bench. It's still there, palm down, waiting to be needed by someone who wasn't. You resist the urge to put it on, just to feel softness pretend to be yours. Instead, you smooth it with 2 fingers and keep walking. Below, the corridors reclaim their familiar smells. Damp lime, cooling ash, the day's stew retiring into memory. You hang the cloth, wash your hands in water that has already worked as hard as you have, and watch the ripples erase the shape of your fingers. For a breath, you let your shoulders fall. Not surrender. Adjustment. Power upstairs. Pulse downstairs. Misery in small, well-dressed doses. And between them, you, the hinge that keeps the door moving without a sound. There are days when sound fades into the background, and smell becomes the only way you understand the world. The castle speaks through its scents. Every room, every corridor, every forgotten stairway has its own signature, its own invisible voice whispering who belongs there and who doesn't. The stone itself smells old, that deep, cold mineral scent of time, damp mortar, dust, a hint of lichen. It seeps into your clothes, into your hair, into your sleep. You stop noticing it after a while, until you leave. Then you realize every breath outside feels too clean. Morning smells of fire. You start your day feeding the hearths, crouched, coughing, coaxing reluctant embers back to life. The smoke is sweet at first, then bitter as it catches. It stings your eyes and clings to your lashes. You smell of it all day. No matter how many times you wash your face, the soot always wins. The kitchen, by contrast, smells alive, like 1,000 ingredients arguing at once. Roasting meat, spilled ale, chopped onions, wet wool from someone's sleeve, and the sour trace of yesterday's stew still clinging to the rafters. It's chaos, but it's home. The air tastes like salt and heat. Sometimes you catch the faint sweetness of baking bread, and for a moment you remember what hope smells like. Then someone opens the door to the refuse pile, and the illusion breaks. You carry trays between worlds. The warmth of the kitchen, the perfume of the upper chambers, the chill corridors that divide them. Each crossing tells you exactly where you are. By the chapel, the air smells of wax and wet stone. The candles hiss softly, their smoke twisting in lazy ribbons that smell faintly of honey and prayer. You breathe it in, and something about it makes you still your steps. Even the servants move quieter here, as if God might notice them if they make too much noise. The chapel smells different on confession days. Sharper, cleaner. That's because they scatter herbs on the floor. Rosemary, mint, sage. The scent hides the sweat and fear. It's strange how holiness always needs help with hygiene. You know the stables before you reach them. The smell announces itself like a song. Hay, leather, horse sweat, and manure layered together into something oddly comforting. You can tell which horse has passed by the scent of its saddle soap alone. The stable hands are used to it. They joke about how they can't smell filth anymore, but they can. They've just decided to make peace with it. That's what survival really is. Making peace with whatever won't go away. Upstairs, the world smells like money, perfume, oil, ink, beeswax, wine. The Lord's study carries the scent of vellum, animal skin stretched and scraped, soaked in lime, and written on by quills dipped in oak gall. You love that smell. It's sharp and old, like something intelligent burning slowly. Sometimes you pause in the doorway, pretending to wait for instruction, just to breathe it in. The lady's chambers smell entirely different. Powdered lavender, rose water, and starch. You've learned to recognize her presence before seeing her. Her fragrance enters the room first, then her shadow, then her voice. She smells like a promise you're not allowed to keep. The servants' hall has no single scent, just fatigue, layered thick as dust, sweat, soot, boiled cabbage, candle grease, leather, iron, and the faint tang of soap that never truly cleans. You sit by the fire at the end of the day, your hands raw, your clothes damp, and everything around you smells like work. The youngest among you complain about it sometimes. The older ones just shrug. The castle smells like the life you've chosen, or rather, the life that chose you. When you eat, you can't even taste food anymore. Bread tastes like smoke. Meat tastes like iron. Everything tastes like effort. Sometimes, though, there are gifts. Small, fleeting moments of scent that don't belong to this world. A burst of wild air from an open window, rain sliding down the stones, the faint green breath of moss after a storm. You stop what you're doing and just stand there, eyes closed, breathing, like it's the first honest thing you've done all day. Someone always calls your name before you can enjoy it too long. But for that heartbeat, you're free. At night, the castle changes perfume entirely. The fires burn low, releasing that deep, sleepy smell of half-charred wood. The hallways cool, and the air thickens with moisture, mildew, and quiet. You can smell the difference between stone that's cold and stone that's damp. It's a subtle education no one teaches. You just learn it, the way the body learns when to bow. In the dormitory, the smell of sweat, wool, and straw becomes a lullaby. Someone snores, someone prays, someone's candle sputters out. You lie there, eyes open, and listen to the castle breathing through the night, slow, heavy, ancient. It smells of smoke and soap and sorrow, of human endurance pressed into stone. You think about how these walls remember every scent, how every lifetime leaves its trace here, invisible but real. Long after you're gone, the stones will still carry the ghost of your work, the smoke you inhaled, the bread you burned, the sweat that dried into the cracks of the flagstones. In a way, you're already part of the architecture, not in name, not in portrait, but in smell. And when the wind sweeps through these halls 100 years from now, someone else might stop for a second and think, there's something familiar here. They'll never know it's you, but the castle will. There's a kind of silence that doesn't belong to peace, only to exhaustion. You find it sometimes, between tasks, in the narrow corridors that the nobles never see. It doesn't last long, but when it comes, it feels like the world itself has stopped holding its breath. You sit by the back stairs for a moment, the ones that lead to nowhere important. Your hands rest on your knees, your head tilted against the wall. The stone is cool, almost kind. A drop of water slides down from the ceiling and lands on your wrist. You watch it trace a line through the ash on your skin. This is your version of prayer. Quiet, shapeless, human. The castle for once is half asleep. The nobles dine upstairs, entertained by music and wine. The kitchens have slowed to a murmur. The fire crackles lazily, as if even it has grown tired of ambition. You take a step outside into the courtyard. The air is damp and soft, carrying the faint scent of hay and distant rain. The moon hangs above the battlements like a dull coin, pale, chipped, familiar. You can hear everything, the flap of a cloth in the wind, the distant whinny of a horse, the sigh of a door not fully latched. It is strange how loud stillness can be, when you have spent the whole day buried in noise. The younger servants are whispering by the well. You can't make out every word, but the tone is clear. Gossip, laughter, little rebellions wrapped in giggles. Someone mentions a knight who smiled too long at one of the maids. Someone else swears they saw a ghost by the old tower. The laughter rises, soft and fragile. For a moment, it almost sounds like life. You don't join them. You just watch from a distance, leaning against the wall, smiling to yourself. There's something beautiful about people finding scraps of joy in a place designed to grind it out of them. It's like weeds growing through stone, small, stubborn miracles that refuse to ask permission. Later, you walk the servants' corridor again. The candles have burned low, their flames trembling in the drafts. Each one flickers like a heartbeat, unsure whether to keep going. You pass the kitchen and pause at the doorway. The smell is different now, cooler, simpler. Ash, iron, a hint of baked bread still clinging to the air. The huge pot hangs empty over the dying fire. You can hear the faint drip of grease falling into the ashes below. You grab a crust of bread that no one will miss and sit by the hearth. The warmth feels earned, which makes it sweeter. You eat slowly, each bite turning to paste in your mouth. But you savor it anyway, because no one's watching. It's the only time you get to eat like you exist. Somewhere above, you hear the faint echo of a lute. The melody drifts down the stairwell, soft as candle smoke. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. The song isn't about anything you know. Love, maybe, or the sea, or some noble's fantasy of freedom. But you listen like it's about you, because for a moment, it is. For a moment, it belongs to everyone who has ever worked unseen. Every pair of cracked hands that made the music possible. You don't clap, you don't speak, you just breathe and let the sound fade. When you finally step back into the hall, the air has cooled, the torches hiss, the stones glow faintly with trapped heat. You pause beside a window slit, too narrow for escape, but just wide enough to let in the night. Outside, the world is dark and enormous. You can smell wet grass, hear the wind brushing the trees beyond the walls, and suddenly you realize how small the castle really is, not by size, but by imagination. The nobles think these walls are safety. You know better. They're just boundaries with curtains. Still, you love the night that leaks through them, the reminder that something larger exists, even if it's unreachable. It smells of rain and freedom and the life you might have lived if you'd been born a different name. In the corner of the hall, an old man sharpens knives by candlelight. You've seen him before, the quiet one who never complains, who seems older than the building itself. He nods as you pass. "You're still breathing," he says simply. You nod back. "Barely," he chuckles, a sound rough as gravel. That's all it takes. You sit beside him for a while, neither of you speaking. The rhythm of stone and steel becomes a kind of music. He sharpens, you breathe, and time, for once, doesn't hurry. When you return to your bunk, everyone's asleep. The straw rustles as you lie down, your body aching from the familiar choreography of service. You stare up at the dark ceiling, its beams heavy with the weight of other people's lives. You listen again, not for commands, not for bells, just for the heartbeat of the castle. It's slower now, softer, almost kind, like an animal sleeping after a long day of pretending to be a god. You smile to yourself in the dark, because tomorrow the bell will ring again, and you'll wake and bow and work and ache. But for now, for this brief stolen hour, the world is yours. Just you, the flicker of dying firelight, and the whisper of stone walls that, somehow, still remember to breathe. Evening. The word means rest for some, work for others. For you, it means frenzy. The bell that rings at dusk doesn't signal freedom. It is the start of the castle, its grand performance. Tonight, the great hall will host a feast. For the nobles, it's a celebration. For the servants, it's war. The kitchen has already become an inferno. The air hums with heat, smoke, and panic. You move through it like a ghost, balancing platters of meat the size of small animals, dodging elbows, flames, and curses. The cook barks orders faster than prayer. Someone drops a pan. No one looks up. Someone else slips in the grease and keeps crawling, one hand still holding the bread basket aloft. You pass a table where a boy is plucking a goose. Feathers float through the air like dirty snow. The smell, rich, greasy, sweet with fat, clings to your throat. There's no rhythm now, only survival disguised as efficiency. You haul jugs of ale, refill pitchers, wipe spills, turn spits. You're moving too fast to think, too slow to finish. And yet the music upstairs hasn't even started. When the steward finally appears at the doorway, silence drops like a blade. He surveys the chaos with a cold eye and a faint, satisfied sigh. Everything is wrong, but right enough for the people who will never see the mess behind the curtain. He nods once, and that single gesture releases the next wave of motion. You grab a tray of roasted venison, the juices shimmering gold in the firelight, and follow the others up the servant stairs. The smell is intoxicating. Pepper, garlic, and the faint sweetness of wine glaze. You haven't eaten all day, and your stomach reminds you of that fact with a hollow ache. But this isn't your food. Your job is to carry temptation without tasting it. The great hall is alive. Candles flicker in iron chandeliers. Music spills from the minstrel's corner. Lutes, flutes, voices weaving like silk threads. The air smells of roasted meat, honey, and perfume. You step carefully, eyes lowered, tray steady, breathing shallow. Laughter crashes like waves across the long tables. You glimpse gold rings flashing, jeweled cups raised in toasts, faces glowing with wine and entitlement. The lord at the head of the table carves into the roast with a grin that looks practiced. The lady at his side lifts her cup without looking at anyone in particular. You move behind her, invisible, refilling cups, replacing plates, clearing bones. One false step, one sound too loud, and the evening's illusion cracks. Your presence is both required and forbidden. You exist only if you don't. The food keeps coming. Pies thick with meat and dates, loaves of bread carved into swans, trenches of cheese collapsing under their own richness. Everything you touch feels warm, soft, edible, and unreachable. You try not to think about hunger, but hunger thinks about you. It lives in your nose, your jaw, your stomach. It mocks you with every breath of cinnamon, every puff of roasted onion, every buttery sigh that escapes from a pie crust. You stand still for a moment near the edge of the room, pretending to wait for signal. Really, you're just trying to breathe without devouring the air. Then the music shifts. The minstrels play faster. The laughter grows louder. A toast rises for the king, for the hunt, for God, for something no one here actually cares about. You raise nothing. The Lord slams his goblet down, splashing wine that cost more than a month of your life. The drops hit your sleeve, staining the wool deep red. He doesn't notice. You do, because you'll be scrubbing it out before dawn. When the platter's finally empty, the room smells like indulgence turned stale. Bones picked clean, candles guttering, breadcrumbs scattered like small forgotten victories. The nobles lean back, drowsy and smug. The laughter slows, softens, collapses into murmurs. You begin the reverse procession, collecting, stacking, carrying. The plates are heavy with grease, the cups sticky with wine. Your arms tremble, your fingers slip. You catch a falling goblet before it shatters, and no one claps. Back in the kitchen, the feast has ended, but the labor hasn't. The room is a battlefield. Bones, ash, and spilled ale everywhere. Steam rises from the wash tubs like ghosts of the dead food. Someone scrubs the floor on hands and knees, singing softly to keep from crying. Another servant dozes standing up, her hands still clutching a ladle. You pour the scraps into a wooden trough, half-chewed meat, soggy bread, bits of fruit, for the pigs. You pause for a second, staring at it. You could eat that, You know it, but you don't. Instead, you take one burnt end of bread and tuck it into your sleeve. Tomorrow's breakfast, tomorrow's small act of victory. When everything is clean again, you step outside for air. The night is cool, quiet, vast. Above, the windows of the great hall still glow faintly. You can hear the nobles laughing, softer now, drunk on comfort. You look up at those golden rectangles of light and think, not with bitterness, but with clarity. They're not the ones keeping the castle alive tonight. The feast is over. The lords are full, but the walls still hum with work. And you, soot-stained, hungry, unseen, are part of the music they'll never hear. Morning begins the way iron cools, slowly, without sympathy. Before the bell, before the kitchen sparks, you feel it, a pressure in the air, like the castle is bracing for a blow. Footsteps hush themselves, voices shrink, the corridors smell of damp wool and unsaid things. Someone whispers, "Courtyard." That is all anyone needs. You step out with a bucket you don't need, joining the ritual of looking without staring. The sky is pewter, straw sticks to puddles. The Lord stands by the well, calm as carved oak. Beside him, the steward, that polite blade in human clothing. On the ground, a stable boy, knees in mud, back stiff with terror. 14 perhaps, maybe 15. Age is a luxury counted elsewhere. The Lord speaks with the careful patience of a man being watched. A missing strap, carelessness, consequence. Then the steward steps forward, leather in hand. The first strike is not loud, only deliberate. The second is the echo of a rule older than mercy. The third lands like a period. The courtyard exhales. No one moves. You keep your head lowered, not from sainthood, from survival. Pity here looks too much like descent from a distance. When it ends, the boy rises, pale with cold and humiliation, and returns to the stables. He will work twice as hard. That is how forgiveness is managed in places like this. Paid in labor, receipted in silence. Inside, no one mentions it. Punishment is not drama, it is maintenance. The day resumes its clockwork, fetching, sweeping, mending. The kitchen throws heat, the chapel keeps time, the great hall rehearses wealth. You carry on until the bell calls for prayer, low, slow, and heavy, like a hearth being shut. The chapel glows in the gray, a pocket of honeyed light, saints staring from their glass kingdoms. The air is thick with incense, sweet at the first breath, then needling the back of your throat. Knees meet stone, stone remembers. The floor is polished by generations of devotion and the weight of being told to kneel. You join the posture of the obedient. Work is worship, the priest intones, his voice worn smooth by repetition. He talks of humility, of order, of bread earned and bread deserved. He never mentions blisters. He never has to lift water from the well. His hands are clean, his chalice cleaner. You watch the smoke curl and think how holiness always smells a little like a well-managed fire. You glance at the window. By day, it is a storm of color. By night, only lead and shadow. Faith looks different depending on the light. At the front, Lord and Lady, sculpted into serenity. Nearby, the steward, spine like a measuring rod. Farther back, you, and a constellation of tired faces that flicker when the candles gutter. May those who labor find peace, the priest sings. You bow your head and try to fit inside the sentence. Afterwards, the nobles float away first, their robes whispering arrangements you will enact. Servants spill out more quietly, shoes scuffing. You linger, letting the last candle argue with the draft. The chapel smells of beeswax, rose, and old smoke, an aftertaste of carefully contained hope. The boy arrives beside you, moving like a bruise. He studies the floor. They say every lash wipes a sin, he mutters. Whose? You ask. He almost smiles. Depends who's counting. His laugh is short and human, the kind of sound incense can't bless. For a heartbeat, The chapel feels honest. In the morning, rain needles the yard. You are given buckets for the chapel, a joke the day does not intend. The priest nods as you pass, polishing silver into a theology of shine. God sees everything, he says. You want to ask whether God sees grease on the stairs or the blister under your thumb. You do not. You leave the scent of frankincense behind like a perfume you can't afford. Outside, you find the boy combing damp straw into defeated order. You help. 2 figures, 1 rake, the slow grammar of labor. Words would only make the rain sound foolish. There is a holiness in that too, devotion without witnesses. Punishment travels farther than the courtyard. It follows you into tasks with invisible reins. You stand straighter, you answer faster. You let your hunger wait because someone else's impatience is louder. The system tightens its belt around the day, and you carry on, breath by borrowed breath. Dry irony. Discipline is most admired by people who outsource it. At noon, you take hot water to the ladies' chamber. Inside, lavender and starch soften the air. Her voice is gentle, exact. A cushion turned, a seam hidden, the candlelight lowered to flattering honesty. She thanks you without looking, a person saying grace over an obedient room. You step back into the corridor, where smoke resumes its rightful place in your lungs. By evening, the sky clears. You pass the chapel and catch the faint ghost of last night's incense clinging to the doorway. Strange how remembrance alters scent. What stung seems tender now. You think of the window blazing with color when morning finds it, and how truth changes its clothes with the hour. Night lowers itself. In the dormitory, bodies fold into shapes shaped by work. Straw sighs. Someone snores. Someone prays in a whisper that sounds more like counting than pleading. You lie awake, hands clasped, not pious, simply gathering yourself back from the day. The castle breathes around you, slow, heavy, old. Its pulse passes through joists and joints, through you. Here is what you settle on, staring into the hush. Punishment is the castle teaching the body what the rules already taught the mind. Prayer is the body asking the day to leave some part of itself unbroken. Between the two, you keep walking. You scrub the same stones until they remember your hands. You listen for a kinder bell. You become, secretly, a small and stubborn liturgy of your own. Before sleep takes you, a thought arrives as soft as a towel warmed by the hearth. Maybe the miracle is not that anyone believes, but that anyone endures. You turn to your side. The darkness smells of tallow and damp linen and a little rain sneaking through the shutters. Somewhere, a drop falls from the eaves, patient, precise, almost like counting beads. You let it count for you, and when the morning finds your face, it will find it the way the steward prefers, composed, useful, already moving. But for this thin slice of night, with the incense faded and the strap put away, you are only a person breathing, which here is prayer enough. Night doesn't fall here so much as it rises, from the floors, from the wells, from the seams of the stone. It climbs up your ankles and settles behind your ribs. By the time the last platters are stacked and the final ember banked, the castle is a study in dimness. Even the air seems to whisper more quietly, as if sound itself is conserving heat. You step into a corridor that used to be loud. It's smaller now. The torches hiss their thinning breath. The floor remembers every foot that crossed it today and replies with a tired creak. You carry a lamp no bigger than your palm, the flame a fragile punctuation mark in a paragraph of dark. This is when the castle shows you what it really is. Not banners, not trumpets, not the bright fiction of feasts. Just stone and weather and need. The grand illusions have gone upstairs to sleep. Down here, truth removes its jewelry and sits in a chair with poor posture. You begin the night rounds, chamber pots to fetch, ashes to sweep, doors to latch, fires to settle into a glow that can wake again. The routine is ritual by now. Your hand knows the latch that sticks, the hearth that sulks, the hinge that complains in a pitch only the steward can hear. You move like someone mending a net, thread through thread, knot to knot, keeping the holes from widening in the dark. Smell leads more than sight. Cooling tallow, damp wool, iron gone cold. Somewhere a draft carries wet leaf and river mud through a slit window, as if the outside world just remembered you. You pause and breathe it in. It's the kind of air that makes your shoulders drop a half inch without permission. In the women's dormitory, a candle gutters in a saucer. You pinch it out with wetted fingers and feel the day release a last sigh. The sleeping bodies are arranged in practical geometry, backs to walls, knees tucked, hands clasped under chins. A threaded hush passes from palate to palate. Someone coughs, once, then again, a dry scrape that sounds older than the person. You slip away and descend into the lower passage, where the walls sweat even in winter. Rats announce their presence with bold little feet. You stamp once. Negotiations are concluded for the moment. You know the bargain. You get the floor. They keep the spaces between. The laundry room is quieter at night, but not innocent. Bales of damp cloth hold the day's scents like confessions. Onion, horse, smoke, human. You hang 2 shirts nearer the hearth, though you're not supposed to adjust the order. An infraction, technically. Mercy, practically. You tell yourself the steward counts everything except kindness. You might be wrong. Past the bakehouse, the floor cools to the touch of your soles, and the lamplight trembles over dried flour tracked like frost. You touch the oven door, still warm. In the morning, this room will smell like a reason to keep going. Tonight it smells like the echo of one. Outside, the ward is black and silver. Black earth, silver sky. Clouds drag their bellies along the moon. The watch is changing on the wall walk. The guard's voice is low and ordinary. You nod as you pass beneath and receive the smallest of nods in return. At night, rank loosens a notch. People look like people when the candle dies. You take the well path by habit, circling once with the empty buckets so the rope won't swell and seize. The water yawns at you from a darkness that doesn't need torches. You can hear it breathe in there, the slow patience of a thing that doesn't know what calendars are. A stable door knocks. Inside, a mare stamps and tosses, eyes rolling at some dream only horses get. You murmur nonsense the way the stable boys do, little circles of sound tossed on the water of the dark. The mare settles. You feel inexplicably useful. A rare feeling, you admit, when your hands spend most hours undoing messes that refuse to be undone. Back in the great hall, the afterlife of dinner has congealed. Crumbs like pale islands, a slick of fat that remembers heat as a story, bones that look clean because hunger did the washing. You run a cloth across the board's scars. The lamp smoke curls upward, writing its single letter over and over. The banners are shadows. The hearth is a red eye learning to blink. When the castle sleeps, superstition wakes. You've heard them. The kitchen boy who refuses to cross the east stair after midnight. The maid who says she saw a nun without feet drifting by the chapel door. The guard who swears the old well whispers names that belong to the living. You don't exactly believe them. You don't exactly not. Night is generous with versions. You pause by the chapel. The door is unlatched. You close it softly and stand a moment in the scent that never leaves. Wax, cedar, ash of last week's palms. The window is a black geometry, but you imagine the morning colors, as if your mind needs paint where night refuses pigment. You think about yesterday's sermon, about the boy, about the strap that makes rules out of skin. You think about forgiveness and whether it needs the dark to practice. In the servants' hall, a few coals keep company with themselves. You sit on the bench that knows your weight best. You don't intend to sleep. You do the thing that happens just before sleep. You loosen. You stretch your fingers and let them be your age. In the loosened silence, Thoughts stop lining up as soldiers and walk in as neighbors. You remember a field far from stone, where crickets insisted on their importance and stars did a better job than candles. You remember your mother's bread that never tasted of smoke unless the wind was wrong. You remember how rain sounded on a roof that forgave it. Memory is a luxury made of cheap materials. You feel wealthier than any lord for 3 breaths. A mouse scolds you from under the bench, and you laugh, the quiet kind that doesn't move your shoulders. You break the end of a crust and place it a little distance away. Bribery is policy. The mouse pretends not to notice, then notices, then pretends not to care, then cares. You tell no one. This is your diplomacy. You rise and finish the rounds. Iron cooled, doors kissed shut, latches confirming their agreements. The last task is the always task, banking the kitchen fire so it will wake politely. You crouch, rake coals into a village, lay a roof of ash, leave 2 vents like roads to morning. The fire nods, understanding the plan. Now the castle is as quiet as it gets. The kind of quiet that isn't empty. The kind that is full of things that have stopped pretending to be anything else. You stand in it and feel, to your surprise, respected, not by anyone with a name, by the work itself, by the way the day needed you and the night trusts you. You return to the dormitory. The air has thickened with sleep. The room feels taller because everyone inside is smaller. You find your pallet and slide into the cool where your heat will soon be. Straw shifts, then accepts. Your body inventories itself, shoulders chalked with ache, knees clicking their little arguments, wrists telling the story of ropes in a language of tender pulsing. You listen and decide the limbs will hold. The dark is not total. A slit of pale sky hangs above the shutter. The moon has abandoned the clouds to the wind. Someone murmurs a name, not yours, not anyone present, and rolls over. The sound makes a circle in the quiet and then disappears into it. Sleep arrives the way servants do, without announcement, carrying what you need, setting it down where it will be found, leaving by the door that creaks least. But just before the hinge moves, there is that hovering second, the small shore between waking and gone. When the world lets you ask a question, you've learned to ask the same one every night. Let there be enough light to start the fire. Let the strap be idle. Let the bread rise. Let the boy heal. Let the steward miscount. Let the rat keep to his treaty. Let the chapel smell like forgiveness instead of smoke. Let the work be the kind that can be done. The question is not a prayer, not exactly. More like a bargain drafted at a quiet table where both parties are tired and honest. You sign without reading. The night signs with a nod. You turn on your side. The blanket scratches the same patch of your neck it scratches every night. You think, briefly, of the great hall's banners resting in their darkness, of the mare dreaming her nervous dream, of the well breathing like the oldest animal. You think of the lamp's last exhalation. You think of the word enough, and how, here, it feels like gold. When the candle dies, what remains is not emptiness. It is the outline of what you carried all day, now finally set down. It is the shape of your breath, counting itself true. It is the castle, unadorned, admitting that it needs you in a voice soft enough not to embarrass either of you. The bell has not yet found the morning, but it will, and when it does, you will rise into the same choreography, water, fire, linen, ash, and make it look inevitable. For now, you let the night finish its sentence. You let the stone keep your heat. You let your hands forget their names. And the dark, patient, and practical, draws the covers up to your chin like a mother with the good sense to say nothing at all. Morning is a rumor long before it's a color. You wake to the small, truthful sounds. A coal deciding to glow. A hinge debating whether to complain. The soft shuffle of someone who knows exactly where the creek is and steps around it. Breath condenses in the corridor like a ghost rehearsing. The bell hasn't spoken yet, but the castle is already clearing its throat. You sit up, the straw giving its familiar protest. Hands first, you flex them and count the stings. The blisters are less like wounds now and more like signatures. Each one a line you, written on the day, and the day has written back. Wool scratches your wrist. Cold looks for the gap at your collar and finds it. You dress the same way priests do, with intention, cord, tunic, habit of survival. The floor greets your feet with its stone honesty, and you answer by moving. Down the passage, across the draught of the side door, into the half-lit belly of work. The kitchen is a horizon of ember and iron. You bank the fire awake, speak to it with the old language, poke, breathe, wait, and it answers an orange. The first pot receives water, and the sound is a hymn in a tiny, faithful key. Someone yawns near the bread table. Someone else brings in a basket of yesterday's onions, their skins whispering like bad news made useful. You step into the yard while the pot negotiates with flame. The sky is the color of pewter, cooled by rain. The well is thinking its slow, wet thoughts. In the stable, a horse sneezes and looks personally offended by weather. You murmur a line you don't remember learning and tie your apron tighter. The day has made its offer. You accept. Inside, you lift, pour, carry. You become the old choreography again, a reel of small precisions, the tilt that doesn't tea spill, the turn that avoids the nail head, the pause that makes the tray steady. Work is a music that survives even the clumsiest conductors. Your body plays it from memory. You pass the ladies' corridor. Lavender lingers like a rumor of gentleness. You pass the priest's door. Incense sighs in the wood, as if belief has a smell long after words are done. You pass the steward halfway up the stair. His nod is a coin that buys you nothing, and still you pocket it. Courtesy is a currency, even when the market is closed. In the great hall, the banners sleep with their eyes open. The tables remember hands as much as feasts. You lay out bread, the kind that looks like sunlight had a sturdier cousin, and touch, with 2 fingers, the place where the wood is smoother from decades of wiping. The castle speaks here, not loudly, but with conviction. Keep, maintain, continue. You wonder, as you often do in these first minutes, what will remain when you leave. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday when your hands belong to rest instead of rope. Will the floor recall your particular weight? Will the stair pause at the exact spot where you learn to shift the bucket to the other hip? Will the oven door hinge out of habit, resist just enough to expect your palm? You think yes. You have been taught to be unnoticed, and yet the stone notices everything. Smell is the book you read best. Today it says, rain, wool, yeasty hope, a little horse, last night's wine making its last argument in the cups. Later, it will add ash and onion and the particular sweetness of fatigue that approaches honesty. The nose learns the calendar here. It tells you when to hurry, when to hush, when to accept that cabbage is destiny. You find yourself again in the chapel doorway, not to pray, or perhaps exactly to pray, though your prayers are shaped like tasks. The candles are low, the wick's little bones showing through. The window is a gray map, waiting for morning to color it. You do the smallest work you can think of. Straighten the missile, pinch one wick, spare another, clear a smear of tallow with a thumb. Holiness doesn't argue with housekeeping. It depends on it. Outside, the guards change. Their boots write the same sentence along the wall walk and erase it again. A page drops a spoon and catches it with the reflexes of the forgiven. The stable boy you watched kneel in mud 2 mornings ago lifts a pail one-handed, his other hand a quiet refusal to admit it hurts. You nod to him, and he nods back, and the nod is larger than both of you. By mid-morning, the castle's heartbeat is steady, that dependable thrum of many lives choosing the same rhythm. You carry trays past a conversation about hawks, past a quarrel about timber, past a list of names that stops just before yours. The Lord's laugh arrives and departs like weather. The lady asks for light moved 2 inches lower, and the tapestry accepts demotion with grace. Power is furniture that believes it invented the room. You eat when no one is looking. A corner of bread, the part of a pear that forgot to be fancy. Water that tastes like iron telling the truth. You lean your back 1 minute against the oven, memory of heat, and let the spine uncoil by one vertebra. A private luxury measured in breaths, not coins. Then the minute ends, because minutes here are rented. A messenger arrives at noon, cloak slick with rain, horse bored by importance. Words move fast when saddled. The rest of us follow on foot. In the kitchen, nothing changes except the next thing to be done. That is the most reliable news of all. Afternoon leans, as it does, toward gentleness. The light fades from silver to tin and considers pewter again. Laundry moves from wet to damp to nearly. The broom teaches the floor a brief lesson in decency. In the gallery, you polish the unnecessary helm, and your face, curved, fish-eyed, silly, smiles back at you with a kindness you didn't intend. You let it stay. The room does not punish small forgiveness. You think, because the cloth is circling, and circles invite thought, about the arithmetic of dignity, how much work equals a person, whether the sum ever balances, whether it needs to. You suspect dignity is not a number, but a practice. The way you set down a cup, as if it deserved it. The way you call a horse by name, even when it can't return the favor. The way you fold a blanket so that the next sleep arrives, feeling expected, not accidental. Evening collects itself. You light, you lower, you temper, you bank. The hall prepares to pretend grandeur again, and you prepare to hold the pretense steady, but something in you, not rebellion, not even pride, simply stands up, not physically, quietly, like a chair accepting the weight it was built for. The day has not made you smaller. It has made you exact. You think of all the names that never get spoken over meals, and you decide, without ceremony, to speak one of them in your head, yours, then another. The laundry girl with the burn that healed in the shape of a crescent moon. The old knife sharpener who says breathing counts. The boy whose back learned the grammar of rules and still went to rake the rain straight. The cook who pretends to scold but smuggles crusts like letters. You say these names softly, not to the ceiling, not to the altar, but to the stone. Stone keeps better than paper here. Night approaches from below, the way it does in places built from cellars up. Your lamp, later, will carve the dark into reasonable portions. Your feet will remember the safe edges. Your hands will bank the last fire with the patience of a librarian, shelving embers for morning borrowers. And then the dormitory will gather the day's debts and pay them, one steady breath at a time. You will lie down. The straw will bargain, as always. The blanket will be honest about its limitations. The roof will tell you what the sky is doing without asking your opinion. Somewhere, a mouse will be wrong about how quiet it is. Somewhere else, the chapel will exhale the last ribbon of smoke and keep the rest of its secrets. The well will hum its old song in its old throat. The horse will dream the simple dream of a field. The Lord will snore like a sword, remembering its only metal. The lady will sleep like a sentence that knows where its commas belong. And you will listen for the line that connects it all. The one you can't see but you can feel, from coal to kettle, from rag to table, from rope to palm, from banner to breath. The invisible work that holds the visible world in its chair. The echo in the stone that answers when no one calls your name. You smile in the dark, not triumph, not surrender. Something in between that tastes like fresh water. Enough light to see the hearth. Enough strength to carry the next tray true. Enough quiet to keep one promise to yourself, that the kindnesses you smuggle into the day will outlast the day. If you enjoyed drifting through this piece of the past, maybe leave a like. or just let the story carry you the rest of the way to sleep. If it felt right, you could subscribe or whisper a comment telling me where you're listening from tonight. I like imagining the quiet constellation you are part of, little lamps of attention across the map, each one warming a stone room of its own. Either way, rest now. Let the castle keep its watch. Let the fire remember you kindly. And when the bell finds morning, may it find your hands ready, your breath steady, and your name, whether spoken or not, written softly into the walls that listened